we are very grateful to have David Harper back with us for part 2. So can we give David a big welcome as he comes and joins us? What we're going to do tonight is we're going to look at 2 different things. One is something that everybody treats as fact. Yeah. That's a theory. Yeah. And one thing that everybody treats as not fact, that has reliable evidence to back it up.
Well, you've confused me already.
Well, let's start with the one that is treated as fact but is a theory.
Okay.
And that is, we'll call it Darwinism.
Darwinism. So that is then the theory of evolution, isn't it?
That's right, yes. So in your journey, in your process of writing the book and finding out, because your journey in this book is trying to find out what is true.
Yes, and if a God exists.
Yes, so that was your mission.
Yes.
So we talked about creation last time in a very general sense, yeah. As in the age of the universe, did the universe have a beginning? We talked about the creation initially of life, and we talked a little bit about the Goldilocks zone that we are in, that everything is perfectly balanced so that life can exist. But now we're going to dig into what that life looks like. So, what was before you started researching this, what was your thoughts on evolution?
On evolution? Well, I think like most people being brought up in the 20th century, we had a very, very minimum basic understanding of evolution, but I think I probably believed it.
Yeah.
Because I was told that it was true. And I remember having a discussion with a very disgruntled biology teacher at school. Now, I was not very good at school. I wasn't studious at all. I just wanted to get out of school. But I remember finding this topic fascinating. We were talking about evolution, and he taught it to us as if it was fact. And I said, well, sir, if this is true, if we were all fish at one point, and then we got legs and everything else, and we eventually became humans, surely there's some kind of design process going on here. Could God be involved? And he said, shut up, Harper, which was not unusual for me at school. Shut up, he said. He said, don't ask stupid questions. It just happened. Okay. So I think from that point on, I kind of half accepted that evolution was true. I didn't understand how it could be true, but I think just being a young person, I had more important things in my life at the time to get on with. So I accepted it, like most people I knew, that it was true, but I had no real understanding of it.
So you had a basic gist,
yeah,
and then it just got filed in the background.
Yes, because, I remember speaking to somebody maybe about 18 months ago when I started this journey, and I asked them about evolution, and they said to me, well, we were just fish, weren't we? That's it. Weren't we just fish at one point, and then we became humans? And I said, well, I don't think we were now looking into it. And it's quite an interesting thing. And you don't need to be a biologist, and you don't need to be a rocket scientist to look into the Darwinist theory of evolution, which teaches us that our distant ancestors were bacteria. One bacteria. That's it. Madam, in your kitchen, you've got hundreds of thousands of them. And I'm not just saying you because you look like you've got hundreds of thousands in your kitchen. You actually don't. You look pristine. But even you've got hundreds of thousands of bacteria in your kitchen and many more in your toilet, sir. Millions of the blighters. You, according to Darwin's theory, are related to one bacteria. So this seemed very odd to me. And you've got to put it into context as well, because Darwin wrote his theory, and remember, it is a theory. Now, a scientific theory must be proven, or you must be able to compare it against something similar. So it's not just an idea. It's meant to be a really thought-out, practiced theory. Think of the time zone. My normal life is history and antiques. 1859, The Origins of Man was published. This is the theory of evolution. 1859. 59. This is before free education, before electricity, indoor toilets, before aeroplanes, before motor vehicles. It was a very different place. And most people, if you were born in Billingham, you would die in Billingham. You might move to Middlesbrough if you were lucky. Yeah. But generally, people lived and bred in this. It was just a different world. And this theory came out. And when you do read his theory, he talks about how creatures evolved from these little bacteria through a series of mutations, that a mutation would occur and it would then pass on these mutations to its offspring, and these odd mutations would develop, legs and limbs and lungs and hearts and brains and move into tadpoles and fish, and then the fish would decide through a series of mutations. Now, when you see a mutation in anything, it's not a positive, but this is the theory. The theory is based on these mutations, which develop over time.
So where did Darwin initially really start with this? Where did the idea itself come from?
A couple of decades beforehand, Darwin had been thinking about this, has many other scientists as well. And then in 1859 he published it. And a lot of people in the scientific world and academic world loved the idea that we were just evolved from bacteria and then fish. Because if you could prove this was true, you discount the very idea of a creator. Because if you don't need a creator to develop life, then those that are the top of the pile in society, the scientists, the academics, are the new gods. And I think that had a lot to do with it as well. Those that just hated the idea of a god were looking for an excuse not to believe in a god. And so they clung on to this theory, which has never been proven. Darwin said, I think we might have mentioned this, at the time that the biggest claim against my theory is the lacking fossil record.
Yeah.
He searched for these fossils to find the missing link between the fish and man, the fish and a lizard, the fish and a bird, fish and an ant, fish and an elephant. All animal life on Earth, according to Darwin, originated from a bacteria. And there's lots of fossils. In museums around the world, there are 40 million fantastic specimens of fossils, many more in private collections. Not one fossil categorically shows the missing link between one creature and another.
Now, often when we use the term missing link, we think of a monkey man.
We do.
That's what
we do, yeah.
prompts us in our head,
Yeah.
that there's a link between men and monkeys.
Yes.
But is there any fossil at all that shows any one species becoming any other one species?
No, there isn't. There are spurious fossils when you look at them, and they claim that this is showing or indicating one creature becoming another, but it is bonkers. There's a fossil called Java man that was found in the 19th century in the Far East, and they reckon it's a very early fossil of a humanoid, something that evolved into us. But when you look at the ground where Java man was found, it is just a skull plate, some other bones, and it's been proven in this space were human remains, ape remains, animal remains, and in the 19th century they put these remains together and kind of put together this fascinating looking creature. But we don't really know whether they're humanoid, ape, or animal bones. So there are spurious examples.
And that's hard to get your head around, because I'm sure we all remember being told that the fossil record proves that species evolve.
Well, yes, it does in a many way, because evolution is true. Microevolution. Evolution within species. Take us as an example. We've all evolved over very many generations. We mentioned before about 40,000 years ago, the average height of a European man was 6 feet tall. He dropped to 5'4", and now we're about 5'9" as an average height. Our teeth are changing. So many people are born today without wisdom teeth. This is evolution within species. Our teeth shrunk over the last few hundred years. They're now getting a bit bigger because of fluoride. Fluoride, thank you, yes.
Our teeth are getting bigger, but Americans aren't.
Yes. So there are these little nominal changes, and that's called microevolution. And you see it in all animals. But it's interesting you talk about that evolution of man. Do you all remember at school seeing the chart where you've got the monkey one end and the man the other end, then all these creatures in the middle.
Yes.
And you're right, we've got millions of examples, ancient examples of the monkey this end, including living monkeys, and millions of humans this end, including living humans. None of the creatures in between have ever existed. We can't find them. They don't exist. So the leap of faith, this is a very funny thing, because Christians are accused of having this faith built on, and I used to believe it. I used to believe that Christians had a blind faith. They just woke up one morning and decided to believe in God. That's what I thought. I've now discovered, of course, that Christianity is built on a firm foundation of evidence and truths that can be proven. Atheism, the evolution theory, by goodness me, you need a big dose of faith. You really do.
So you talk about how species change over the time. Micro evolution.
Yeah.
I guess is the other one macro.
Macro.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So we see natural selection, and
Yeah.
Darwin was big on natural selection, wasn't he?
Well, Darwin was huge on natural selection, and this was his proving point he made to prove that you were once a fish. And he used the Darwinian finches. You've heard of those from the Galapagos Islands. And in Darwin's book, he showed he could prove that these finches, over very many generations, had changed the shape of their beaks. And he said, put it very simple terms, all you have to do is times that by millions. The beak changes, the legs change, and eventually you get a new creature. But it's not true. This was through natural selection, because the finches on the Galapagos Islands, there was two particular kinds of finch that were very, very attractive to other finches. Mm-hmm. And those finches that are attractive are those with very long beaks, which are great at catching flies, and those with stubby beaks that are great at cracking open nuts. And so if you're lucky and you're a finch that are born with any one of those beaks, then other finches want to breed with you. And so natural selection is the finches with the really good-looking beaks breed more. And this is how the beaks evolved into a very high-density population of stubby beaks, or in another part of the Galapagos, long, thin beaks. But he equated that as an example of macroevolution in practice.
So he saw it as mutation rather than...
He saw it as mutation, yes.
Right, okay.
Yes. Well, it's a bit like, if two tall people breed, you'll generally get a tall person. That's just what happens.
Or two short people.
Or two short people. What? Yeah, exactly.
That's why I'm short.
Your father's 6'2".
That threw me, sorry.
Well, that's what he said to me anyway.
So I guess a good example of this is something that we can all see and relate to would be the household dog.
The household dog, yeah, it's brilliant. I use the example of dogs in the book. I mean, I love dogs. And when we touch on DNA, if we do again tonight, it's fascinating to realise that we're 84% similar in our DNA to dogs. I loved that fact. I loved that. Of course, evolutionists will tell you that's proof of, having a relationship, an ancestor to a dog. It's carbuncle, and that's bonkers. But yes, dogs are the perfect example of how microevolution works. So humans first domesticated dogs about 40,000 years ago when we took in less aggressive wolves. So a lone wolf would be wandering around our camps and the humans would feed it. And the wolf would come into the camp and we would develop a relationship with that non-aggressive wolf. We'd then find another non-aggressive wolf and allow them to breed. And so then the wolves became hunting partners and the humans and the wolves worked together and they built bonds and relationships. So over very many thousands of years, humans micro-evolved the wolves into domesticated dogs. But they are still dogs. A dog can breed with a wolf even today because they are related. But even when mankind gets involved and helps evolution, it cannot change one creature into another. No matter how hard you try, you cannot do it. So if man's intelligence can't do it with the aid of nature, how do you expect nature to do it by accident through a series of mutations? Mutations normally die out. They don't strengthen and change. There is just no evidence of species jumping species.
So we can see going from wolf to labradoodle
Yes,
is possible.
it is possible. What would you prefer, a wolf or a labradoodle?
A wolf, I think. So we see that, and so we go back to Darwin again,
Yeah.
and the time period he lived in. We've discovered a lot since then, generally
Yeah.
in science.
Yeah.
Do you think if Darwin had the knowledge that we now have scientifically, he would have developed the same theory? And why?
I cannot for the life, don't forget I'm not a scientist.
Yes, of course.
But I cannot for the life of me understand why or how Darwin could come up with this theory if he knew about DNA, as an example. I just can't see it. We touched on DNA before, but the complications of DNA are just absolutely astounding. And to try and get an idea of the size, I don't know whether I mentioned this last time, but I've come up with a new way of measuring DNA.
Okay.
And it's mind-boggling. But you've got to remember, first of all, that your DNA number is a computer code. It's a program that is absolutely word letter perfect, and it's 3 billion digits long. And just like a computer, you are designed by, I would say, a nanoscientist. You've got 30 trillion cells running around your body telling you to breathe, how to produce blood, to train your heart, all of these things. 3 billion digits long, 300,000 miles long, that number would be if you were to put it onto a car number plate. So that's the size of the thing, word perfect order. But the size of your DNA, in reality, you could sort of measure by taking your thumb and forefinger and creating a gap between the two of around 1 millimeter. So we can all guess what roughly 1 millimeter is. You can do it if you want to do it, because it's fascinating. And you can get that. Did you do it? You've got 1 millimeter.
I think that might be 2 millimeters.
Okay, well, 2 will do, right? It doesn't matter. Now then, if you divide that by 100, that gap, that's the size of one of your DNA strands. 1/100th of a millimeter, and it contains 300 digits, like a computer code that would stretch around the world if it was put on the car number plate 12 times in that gap. Now, if he knew that, I cannot for the life of me understand how Darwin would say that is not evidence of a designer. You'll accept that your computer's designed. One shaving of skin, one eyelash, is so supremely complicated that it is 50, and you can Google any of these things, you are 50 million times more complicated, technologically complicated, than an iPhone. One cell in your body is more complicated than a space shuttle. Humans can make space shuttles, they cannot create a human cell. And when you look at those human cells in scientifically rendered images, you can Google it online, you just look at a human cell and you try and convince yourself that is not designed.
They look like little cities, don't they?
They look like little cities,
Yeah.
all interconnected, with thousands of little mini parts, like when you look at a computer board, and you see all these little welding marks and soldering marks. It's just the same, but in nano miniature. You remove one or two of those things that look like skyscrapers with any one of your cells, your cell doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
It's like computer code. If there's one bit of code
It's a blip.
wrong,
It will malfunction or not work.
Yeah.
And all of these things have to be in order, in place, at the very same moment to come alive.
which brings us back to what I think Darwin said.
Yeah.
That he would, you'll have to correct me in how he said it,
Yeah.
that he would disown his theory
Yeah.
if it could be proven that something existed in the human body
Yeah.
that couldn't get there in stages.
That's
it had
right.
to exist all at once.
Yeah.
I've worded that really
No,
badly.
no, you haven't. It's exactly right. He said that if any one organ in the body, it could be proven that it was impossible for it to, over a series of millions of years, build itself through a series of mutations, then it would debunk his theory. Well, you can look at any organ in the body, in truth. We touched on the heart and last time, and we did mention the eye, but it's worth mentioning again. The eye absolutely debunks that, because the eye, compared to, say, a Rolls-Royce fighter jet engine, which has about 40,000 moving parts, this is a very complicated, serious bit of kit as an engine, and it's huge. A human eye has 2 million moving parts and millions of cells, and on average 1 million connections per eye back to the brain. That, to be an eye, had to be complete from day dot. It could not evolve into being an eye.
Yeah, it can't just start as this
A blob.
blob in your face. That
It
doesn't
can't.
do anything.
And 2
Yeah.
sockets and a brain. What's
Yeah.
the brain doing? Where am I? The brain needs to see.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in fact, we did mention Dr. Ming Wang, the eye surgeon from America. That was the one thing that got him over the line. So he was an atheist, Chinese chap, went to America, became disillusioned with the atheist way of thinking, and started reading the Bible and wondering. And actually, I didn't mention this. I'll come on to the eye bit in a moment, but Wendy and I were talking about it. And Dr. Ming Wang really wondered, and this is very basic, this is one of the most intelligent men on the planet, I would suggest. He's one of the best-known eye doctors in the world. And he started wondering, how on earth does a human make a human? He said, a woman, a female human, makes a human in 9 months. How does she do that? Well, many of you will have had children. Can you answer it? How did you do it? Through a series of mutations, so perfectly. It doesn't make sense. And so what he started to begin to believe was that there is a designer behind all of this. You don't find cars making themselves. We don't make robots that make themselves or computers that make themselves. But humans and all other animals are programmed to make themselves.
I guess you're saying that can't evolve because you can't pass that down a generation until you're already able to create.
You had to be able to create a human being from day dot.
Yes.
You couldn't take millions of years not creating human beings. You had to have the capability to create a human being.
Yeah, I get
And
that.
do you see that?
Yeah.
And so these were questions that he was asking, and being an eye doctor and knowing the complication of the eye, realizing that the eye was so supremely complicated, that was the thing that got him over the line. And he moved away from atheism, looked deeper at Christianity and other faiths, and eventually became a born-again Christian. And there's a film about him called Sight, Dr. Ming Wang. But, for a very clever man to say, how does a woman make a baby? Have you ever asked yourself that question? No, I hadn't.
No.
But nobody can explain it.
No.
Nobody can. It just all points to a designer. So this is where I was getting to with the theory of evolution. But, that's the biology side. The biology side of it is wildly interesting. But then over and above that, evolutionists will tell you that evolution is cruel, ruthless, brutal, and unintelligent. You ask any one of them, they will all say that's what it is. So why then were humans evolved to appreciate beauty, to feel emotions, love, have a consciousness, feel morals, ethics? Why? Because evolution, that makes no sense. Why do we have a moral inbuilt code to protect our neighbour? God forbid give our life up for our neighbour, which many of us would do if evolution were true. If evolution were true, you should want to kill your neighbour and take all of his goods, because that's the brutality of evolution.
Let me throw one at you then.
Go on.
Because some people would say, well, we've learned, again, through evolution, that in a tribe there's protection and security, therefore we've become genetically hardwired to protect the tribe.
Yeah. It is an argument that I've heard, and it is the most common argument, but it still doesn't make sense. You can't have it both ways.
But it never explains self-sacrifice.
It does not explain that. And you're right. And no human culture that has ever existed has ever thought that cowardice and cruelty were good attributes. Mm-hmm. They've always valued bravery and kindness. Every single human tribe. Where does that come from in the evolutionary scale?
Even beyond that, the kindness and empathy we feel towards animals.
That's right.
The earthquake that happened this week, I don't know how much news footage I've seen of dogs being rescued. Mm. And there's something about seeing a dog being rescued from a building that makes you, oh.
Yeah, that's true. Where does that come from?
That can't be inbuilt through evolution, because you wouldn't even see a dog.
No, not at all. Again, they can't have it both ways. They can't say that evolution is brutal and cruel, and then it's kind and loving. They can't. Mm. But consciousness, when I was doing my research, it was consciousness that really, really got me. DNA, of course, was a big one. But you all understand that you're conscious beings. You know where you are, what you're doing. You know that you're alive and you sense love and all of these things. And crucially, you know you're going to die. And you have this inbuilt consciousness. But let me ask you a question. Where is your consciousness? Can anybody, I hope you can answer it, because if you do, we'll become millionaires. Because science and philosophers have been trying to work out what consciousness is. Everybody accepts that we have it, but nobody can explain where it is. But consciousness is as real as a limb. So we've got two arms. We know where they are. Where is our consciousness? We don't know whether consciousness is within us or outside of us. Mm. And those atheists that you might speak to will say, well, it's all just part of chemical reactions in your brain. Well, it has been scientifically proven by neuroscientists that that is not true. Neuroscientists, nobody can tell you where your consciousness is. It relates to your brain, your mind, and it works with it, but it is not connected. We don't know where it is, what it looks like, how much it weighs, but we know it exists. Now, this is an example of supernatural, in truth, because science can't explain it. Natural laws can't explain it, therefore it's supernatural.
The brain itself is something that we just still don't understand.
The brain is wild. It's even wilder than the eye. The brain. I started looking at brains. Oh, my goodness me. The brain is the most complicated machine known to mankind. There is more information in your brain than you'll ever know. And I compared it to an iPhone. So an iPhone, your brain can hold as much info as 20,000 iPhones. I'm talking videos, photographs, messaging, emails. 20,000 iPhones is the capability of your brain. Now, your brain weighs about as much as a pineapple. You pile 20,000 iPhones together, they weigh as much as a bull elephant. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
You looked that up, didn't you?
I did look it up. I love doing things like that. What do you think I did for 11 months? Searching for God. I was digging in all sorts of different holes. And I couldn't not find evidence for God. And this is one thing we haven't really, we talked about evolution and everything else, but of course, my research all pointed to a creator.
Yeah.
Everywhere I looked, I couldn't get away from evidence for a creator. It's just bonkers to me that people can't see it when they open their eyes with their 2 million moving parts.
Yes. Very complicated eyes to
Very
open.
complicated.
You talked a little bit in your book. We will come to questions in a moment because I'm aware we've spent a long time on this thread. But it's been good, so I don't mind.
Well, a few people have fallen asleep. I don't know whether you noticed.
You talked about was it an experiment where a brain had been
Yes.
isolated one half from the other,
Yeah.
and yet was still able to communicate.
So this is evidence from a brain surgeon that I talk about in the book, who was an atheist. And he just grew very disillusioned with the atheism. It was very totally depressing. No hope, no peace, no joy in atheism. And so he started examining Christianity. But he did notice, being a brain surgeon, that you can cleave the human brain in two and you can still survive. So there's an operation called the split brain operation.
Well named.
It really is. It really is. And it is performed on patients who suffer with epileptic fits. And so your brain is in two hemispheres, and if you can cleave the brain in half, you can stop an epileptic fit moving from one hemisphere to the other. It sounds bonkers, but it's perfectly true. Again, Google split brain operation. And so these neuroscientists would cut people's brains in half, literally sever every single material connection, and the person could still live. And it stopped the attack moving across the hemispheres. But they would, of course, assumed initially that if you were to do this, the two sides would stop communicating. So to see that glass of water and to pick it up, both sides of my brain need to communicate at the same time. One side sees it, one side directs me to pick it up. So when you've got a cleaved brain, you'd assume that I can see it, I can talk about it, but I can't pick it up. So you'd imagine all sorts of complications. They find that this isn't the case. The brain, two parts of the brain can still communicate with no material connections. Now, an atheist will tell you that's impossible. He won't deny it's not true now, of course, because it's been proven, but because it's all about the material and the physical, it should be impossible. But neuroscientists now say that this is evidence of your consciousness, your human soul. The consciousness, your consciousness is connected to your soul, your spirit, and this is partly how you run. Your brain, your mind works in partnership with your soul, and it becomes like a Wi-Fi connection. There is no material connection, yet the two parts of the brain can still communicate. Nobody can explain how that is possible in the material world. They can't tell you how that works. And so this particular neuroscientist I talk about in the book, this was one of the things that led him to become a believer in a creator initially, and then with research, a Christian.
Wow. Wow.
The consciousness problem.
That's fascinating.
It's
Absolutely
bonkers. It's
fascinating.
bonkers. It's bonkers, but true. And my book is full of bonkersness, but true.
It's one of those things where you go, I can't even work out how that works.
No, I can't.
And
Who decided it was a good idea to cleave a brain in two anyway?
I mean, that's a whole other question.
Yeah.
But yeah. I can't. I was going to say I can't get my head around it.
No.
But I guess my head will do that itself. Right. Let's open up for some questions.
If you think like things like neurons and stuff like that, there's gaps in there, there's synapses, and you have chemical messages. So surely, I'm not trying to disregard what you're saying, but the brain is not truly separated because you've got the brain stem and the rest of the body allowing communications.
So
I didn't know you invited a neuroscientist. Well, that all sounds eminently sensible, but if you Google it, you will find that neurosurgeons say no, that it should not communicate. Nobody can explain how it can. What you've just said sounds sensible.
Yeah, it's obviously found a way to do it. There's a
it's
way
found
that is there.
But it's not a material connection. They say it shouldn't work. And they should know that because they've cut literally millions of fibres, and they say it should not work. But don't forget, it stops an epileptic fit moving from one side of the brain to the other.
Also, the electrical pulses can't be going.
Exactly. So those pulses do not travel. The patient is partly cured and can function. And so if the epileptic fit can't cross from one hemisphere to another, how is the brain communicating?
Well, there you go.
Thank you. Thank you, though.
There you go. Paul.
Yes.
Paul?
Thanks again for coming, David. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
2 questions on evolution, if I could.
Yes.
I've never believed in evolution. Never believed that I came from a monkey. That's for sure.
Have you been accused of that in the past?
When I had more hair, the beard, maybe, but not now. You were told at school to basically shut up and stop asking stupid questions. Yeah. Surely we have so much evidence now that it would be right to say to the evolution scientists to shut up and stop being unscientific.
Yes.
Because what they're still promoting is just nonsense.
It seems that way to me, unless I'm missing something.
Yeah.
But I'm not. I haven't found it yet. And I spent 11 months worrying that I was making a fundamental mistake because I couldn't find any evidence that made any logical, rational sense for evolution.
And obviously not helped by the likes of, Sir David Attenborough, who I greatly admire.
Yeah.
Love his programmes and all the rest of it, but promotes, in a sense, evolution.
He does, very much so,
That doesn't
yeah.
help us.
No.
And many of the programmes we see on TV, again,
Yeah.
promote evolution.
Yes.
I just wonder, do you think we'll ever get to the stage where in 1859 or whatever it was, when, the world up till that time had been a God-fearing world,
Yeah.
and then in a moment of time, as you rightly said, everything changed.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll ever get back to the point where, there is so much evidence against the evolution thinking that we could have another seismic shift?
Well, wouldn't that be wonderful?
It would.
And I genuinely pray for that.
Yeah.
Because I think it would create a much happier, safer, more joyful, peaceful society.
Yeah.
I really do. And I think if you look at the 17th to the 19th century advancements in science, these were all Christian scientists. I think we might have touched on it. But they looked at everything around them and tried to work out how God made it, how God, the super scientist, did it. And science moved on with leaps and bounds. And then after 1859, introduced all these new scientists who kept looking at everything around them and tried to work out how it made itself by accident. That, to me, is not an advancement. So I think what I find heartwarming is that I found endless examples of atheist scientists who were taught evolution as fact. There was a lady called Lynn Margolis, who ironically won the Darwin Award, the Evolutionist Award, because she was a real evolutionist. And she became a Christian. And her journey is a good one, and you can look it up yourself. But she said, I believed evolution. I believed that everything happened through a series of mutations because I was told it was true. I then went looking for my own evidence, and I decided it was untrue. So you've got all of these scientists who were just told, black and white, this stuff is real. And so I focus a lot in the book on those that decided to go on their own journey and came out the other end believing in a creator. So I hope there's many more of them. And I think with, microevolution of our brains, our intelligence, and the development of the internet, I talk about that. And I think it's a bad thing in many ways with some of the social media, but at least it opens up an opportunity, literally channels like YouTube, where people can hear an opposing view and can listen to very clever scientists who believe in God like you believe in God. And they are a breath of fresh air. I'd highly recommend you find them on YouTube.
Can I ask you, as you were researching, did you keep feeling like, well, I must have missed something? There must be, must be.
All the time. All the time. And I was having terrible panic attacks. I became quite unhappy through a lot of it. Real shocking sensations of, I must be making a mistake. I'm missing something. But this is where I think I began looking at the Bible, more so, praying, and that certainly helped. And I got over it eventually. But yeah, I think there were probably moments in my research where it would have been much easier just to forget all of this and go back to the materialist world. And I say, just go and buy a new car. Not that, go and work out if I can afford it, work out the payments, and get back into a materialist world and get into a new car. It crossed my mind, because this is mind-blowing stuff and life-changing stuff. And when you get to learn it, you can't unlearn it. You can't. It sinks in, and that's what was happening. It was dropping, it was sinking in all the time. But my natural biases, one, against Christianity, and two, I suppose, the subliminal education I had growing up that evolution and all of that was true, well, it was a real internal fight. It was hard for me, emotionally hard, yeah.
And I guess for people watching or people here, if that's a place you're in, that's okay because you've been there. You've been at that sort of point of going, now hang on a second. I don't want to be one of the crazies here. You know.
That's right. It's like, hang on a second. Why hasn't anybody told me this?
Yeah.
It was really quite a frustrating period. You know, I went through a basic average educational system. Nobody gave me these options. I'd been brought up in a family that disregarded God. So you can't blame them for that. But I didn't watch programs or get books offered to me that gave me an alternative view. Why didn't anybody tell me this? And that's why I think I've become a bit of a conspiracy theorist. That I think it's a plan. I do to educate us as a way of controlling us. I do. I really do. The more and you know what? You never stop learning, do you? I mean, I've learnt more in the last 2 weeks than I probably would learn since we last met in 2 months of my past life, because there's so much that keeps dropping on your plate. And I think it's true. I think if you want to control somebody, get them not to believe in God. Much easier. This idea that Christianity controls people is bonkers. It's for the birds. Christianity frees people.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yes, Dave.
A couple of questions. Timescale. You talk about 40,000 years. Many Christians would take it a lot less than that.
Yeah.
Where is your time? And of course, people in the evolutionary world talk millions and millions of years. Where's all that coming from? Where's the timescale come from?
Well, in the book, in the beginning, I talk about the beginnings of the universe being 13.8 billion years ago, because that is the kind of scientifically agreed. Now, I've had a lot of communications since publishing the book from Christians who believe in the 6,000 year-old Earth. And you know what? Me personally, I'm perfectly open to that. It doesn't bother me whether God created everything 13 billion years ago or 6,000 years ago. It doesn't bother me at all. I just now know and feel and believe that God created it. So I think I'm open to it, but I couldn't really go down the new Earth route for a book that is targeted to just the everyday person. That's an internal Christian discussion and maybe a journey for a lifetime. But as long as you believe in God and God did it, I don't care when he did it.
Yeah, because I think when you're making the scientist's argument, what you're saying in the book is you're not arguing against the scientific arguments.
No.
You're looking at the scientific argument and saying, look where it points.
Yes.
In that sense.
It points to a creator.
Even if you took the billions,
yeah,
it still points in that direction.
It does. And then you jump into the Bible and you read that one day to God is 1,000 years and 1,000 years to God is a day. You know, so you think, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. That's one to think about for the future. But I think getting somebody to a point where I was without confusing them on this internal Christian debate, and there are many of them, I think for me was the important thing. Yeah.
Second question, it's more to do with species and moving between species. Is it correct that you can have animals, breeding with other animals which are not their species, and they just become sterile? Is that the way?
Not that I know of. So you can breed,
for example.
Oh, what? Sorry.
Mule.
Well, a mule is basically a horse. So you can breed a horse or a donkey, breed a mule with a donkey. You can breed a guinea fowl with a chicken. You can breed a lion with a tiger. And you will get hybrid creatures. You'll never get a creature out of its species. But most creatures, if they're not from the same gene pool, if you like, they can attempt if they want to. But the likelihood of creating another creature, not that I've ever heard of. So a mule and a donkey, a mule and a horse, they're from the same family. The mule is not sterile. I don't know about that.
All mules.
Are they? I don't know. But does that mean anything?
Oh,
Are they?
sterile mules.
Oh, well, you learn something new every day, don't you? Hang on, I'm going to have to rewrite my book here.
I'll come to the question at the back, but while the microphone and camera goes to the back, how do you get more mules?
Don't ask me, I'm not a scientist.
Right, okay, I don't... Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, okay,
right.
that's interesting, but they're still from the same family. Animals from the same family can breed. All humans can breed. Yeah, well, actually, can I just pick up on that? I didn't know that, but that's a great point. So a mule is a mutation then, isn't it? Which kind of debunks the theory of evolution, because there's an example of a mutation which isn't good, because they can't breed. I think just points more to the creationalist idea.
It does.
Yeah.
A question at the back there.
Yeah, that is right. They're called chimeras, and when you breed like a lion and a tiger, and you get a liger.
That's right, a liger.
Chimeras, and they are sterile. Yeah, that's right. My question, I just want to say first, thank you, David. That was a really great talk, and thank you, Luke. I really liked what you said about self-sacrifice. That was a really interesting point, because that doesn't really fit the narrative, does it? So
No.
I definitely agree with that. I do think one thing that Darwin didn't have access to, microscopes. I think the main problem with all of this, both sides, is evolution real, is evolution not real, is the time frame of everything, right? If we had a time machine and we went back, you would be able to see, if you went back 6,000 years, 6 million years, either way, you'd be able to see one way or another for sure. But we can't do that, obviously, so that's that. But we can do it with microorganisms. So you can look through a microscope and you can see bacteria, and you can see them. They have such short lifespans that they multiply so quick, you can see the evolution happening. Do you know why doctors ask you to finish a course of antibiotics?
Yes, isn't it because if you don't, you haven't built up enough against that they can learn how to come up against them.
They'll develop antibiotic resistance, and then if you take more antibiotics, they won't work anymore.
Yeah.
That's evolution, and that's natural selection as well, and that happens. That does happen within us.
Sure. Wouldn't that be microevolution?
Yeah, of course, but it's on a small scale, and you can see it. And that happens.
Yeah.
How long does it take to take a course of antibiotics? That happens in 2 weeks.
It's interesting to say that, because since the 1960s, there's been an ongoing experiment with bacteria to prove that evolution, macroevolution, is true. And they've been breeding these same bacteria that have now been through, I don't know how many millions of generations. They're still bacteria. There's no movement at all. So they're trying desperately to prove macroevolution. They will see microevolution. And what you've just mentioned is an example of that. So you can kind of fast forward all life forms by looking very closely at tiny microbes. Is that the point you're making?
Yeah.
Yeah. So microevolution, I think every Christian in the world will accept microevolution, because we see it in all creatures and we see it in ourselves. But it's the jumping of species. I think we touched on this as well, Luke, that it's impossible for us to be able to grow wings or zebra skin, because we just don't have those genetics. We don't have it in our code, and it cannot enter our system. So, some of us don't have zebra skin through a mutation, because it's impossible for it to enter our system.
Scientists have made cats glow in the dark.
That's probably giving them chemicals of some sort.
That's for changing their DNA.
Well, it's funny, it's interesting, because I discovered in my research that all humans emit light. We all emit a tiny amount of light. I wonder why. It's odd, isn't it? But we do, and scientists are now believing that they can analyze the light under certain scientific laboratory conditions to determine the healthiness of the body. So all of these amazing things are being discovered. And light, when it comes to the Bible, is a big thing. It's a reoccurring thing. God and light, it just keeps repeating itself constantly. And science keeps finding things with And I do believe that God has just the most amazing sense of humour. He just drops these hand grenades in, and it's these little scientific discoveries that go, why do humans emit light? You know, how is it will help us once science can work out how to read that light. That's microevolution.
That's
Jesus emitted light. Of course he did.
that's good. Have you got anything else you want to add in there? Are you happy?
No, thank you, though.
That was really
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Do you not think really science, different aspects of it, is a model? If you look at classic science, you way back to the apple fall in Einstein. When you take that and put it on a much smaller scale, much larger scale, its theories fail, and then you start coming into the quantum realm, and when you start sort of working stuff out there, it's a lot more complicated. Do you not just think that all science is where we're at this moment in time? So do you get what I mean by that?
Well, I think we're all, I mean, what we're discovering, what we now know to Charles Darwin would be something that he would have thought of as supernatural, or he would say, you're talking nonsense, you're talking about miracles here. So science keeps discovering supernatural and miraculous things. Is that your point? That science continually moves on?
Any more questions on... We've done a few on evolution there, but on consciousness as well, and morality, evolution and morality? Oh, did you have your hand up?
We can talk about consciousness and where the first degree of consciousness lies. So you've got a bacterium or whatever, and eventually you come through to something that is conscious, and then you come through to self-consciousness in a way that a human is. And there's massive leaps between all of that. And I don't think I've ever particularly read much about how evolution might address those different leaps other than complexity, or it can't be complexity alone. Any thoughts?
Well, I don't think evolution really addresses consciousness. An evolutionist will just say it's just the brain. That's it.
They'll say it's chemical
reactions in the brain. We can't explain it yet. We will be able to in the future. It's just the brain. But I think the split brain operation and many other neuroscientists' experiments can confirm that it has only a little bearing on the brain. It is not in the brain, and many do. So I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you have any ideas?
I think you can argue complexity of a human brain. Now compare it to the complexity of a larger brain like an elephant. So both are complex, but the idea of self-consciousness in a human way that's distinctive to an animal way, I don't think can be explained.
Yeah, there's something very different about, and again, could go down a whole rabbit hole here, and we should move on in a bit, but that the human consciousness definitely seems to be something different than anything else we see in nature.
Yeah. Some scientists try and convince you that some animals have a level of consciousness.
Yes, and certainly intelligence is
intelligence, and much more intelligence, I think, than we give them credit for, but not consciousness. Humans are the only animals that have a consciousness and an awareness that there is death, and questions: where do I come from? Who made that? Who designed that? What's the meaning and purpose of life? Searching for happiness, searching for joy, searching for love. This is a peculiarly human condition.
Yeah, I've had pet dogs before, and none of them have had an existential crisis before.
There's no midlife crisis going on there.
Yes, Mitch. Oh, and then Cliff. So Mitch, then Cliff.
Hi. It's a bit of a more personal question. As you were discovering things, were you discussing with people about these new discoveries, and especially with your new Christian daughter? Were you keeping in touch with her, and were you amazed at what you discovered, or you kept them and only at the end, when you were born again, look what happened to me?
Very good, thank you. No, I shared it with as many people as I possibly could because that was part of my journey and my research. So I was asking people all sorts of questions all of the time, from taxi drivers to people that met me in the supermarket and said they watched me on Bargain Hunt. And so I'd say to them, well, that's great. What do you think happens to you when you die?
That's not putting a lot of trust in the taxi driver there.
So I shared it with as many people as I possibly could. Of course, Wendy as well. She was a great sounding block. I would shout her and go, Wendy, I've just discovered something. She reluctantly would come into the room, and I would share it with her. And yes, our daughter Hetty as well, of course, who was delighted watching and hearing this process unfold. But it's funny because when I did speak to Christians, which I did a lot, I'd go to church and interview Christians, whether they wanted interviewing or not. I would ask them questions like, are you a real Christian? And that didn't go down very well often. But no, I gathered information that way by sharing with lots of different people, and it was really very helpful. And it's funny because in the book I came up with 3 really fundamental questions, existential questions, which I would highly recommend you use on anybody. And it's quite surprising just how in-depth a conversation can get with these questions. And the first one is, how was the universe created? You give them 2 options. Was it an accident or by design? Very simple. What about life? Was that an accident or was there a designer involved? And the third question was Jesus of Nazareth a real person? Now, you might think that these questions would be quite scary to a lot of people, but I never had an issue. And I ended up having really in-depth conversations with strangers in cafes over those 3 points. They are very stimulating questions. So, yes, I shared it with as many as I possibly could.
And you were always getting good feedback in that.
I always got good feedback.
Things.
Yeah. Generally, it's odd, isn't it? Because I got much better feedback from people I didn't know compared to some people that I did know, family and friends. Some didn't want to have the conversation at all. I never had that situation with strangers. It's very strange. But so I don't know, explain that one. So. Yeah.
I guess it was helpful for you as well to have conversations with taxi drivers or people like that, as well as a sort of like an idea of bouncing ideas back as well, so that as you're exploring and as you're thinking about it, you're not just stuck internally in your own head.
That's right, and people would open doors in your mind as well. Just ordinary people like me would say something and go, oh, that's interesting. It would take me on another journey, another angle to look at. Yeah. So, very worthwhile. If anyone out there is thinking about going on a similar journey, I'd suggest just speak to people, ask them very basic existential questions, which we could all do with an answer to, especially what's going to happen to you when you die. That's a killer. That's great, that one.
pun intended there.
Yeah.
Cliff.
Coming back to the question that came up about mankind producing light. And I think David said, we don't know where that light came from.
Yeah.
I was just mulling over that and thinking about the scripture that says, he was the true light that lights every man that comes into the world. So we know that we were made in the image and the likeness of God.
Yeah.
So it would seem that God put that light there at our creation.
I absolutely agree. And I think this is, again, another sort of sense of humour example of God. We've only recently discovered in the last 10 or 20 years, maybe, that at the time of conception, when the sperm impregnates the egg, there is an instantaneous flash of light. And it has been filmed. Talk about, I'm getting shivers at the back of my spine, talking about Jesus being the light of the world. The Turin Shroud for another night, I researched that. If you think that's a fake, think again. That they reckon now, science says, the only way that could have been produced was a nuclear reaction of some sort and a flash of light, I don't know, a millionth of a second, a flash of light. Bang. It's all over the place. So, it's fantastic. I think when we get onto the Bible, we might touch on those things.
We might, in fact, that's a great segue, because we've talking about the Bible mentioning things that we are only now discovering.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which takes us to our second topic for the night, which will be shorter than the first one, I promise.
They all want to go home.
Is the Bible itself as a document. Now, before we start talking about how the Bible has been proved reliable in certain ways, and things are mentioned in the Bible that we've discovered afterwards, let's start with your relationship to the Bible. Before you start the journey, you didn't really have a high regard for it.
I had no relationship with it.
Yeah.
And I had no regard for it. I was taught growing up that the Bible was nonsense. It was for weak-minded people. It was a fairy tale, all made up by man, designed to control man. It was about power and money and all of these terrible things. That's what I thought of the Bible. I had no real understanding of it. In fact, I say in the book that I had a schoolboy understanding of the Bible. That's actually untrue. I had a much less than a schoolboy understanding of the Bible. I had never read the Bible, and nobody had taught me anything about the Bible growing up. Maybe they tried.
Yeah.
It just washed over me. I wasn't interested. And so I had zero knowledge of it, and it petrified me, in truth. Because my daughter kept saying, Dad, read the Bible. Oh, gosh. I'd rather look for science and history and stuff at the moment. And she did give me a Bible, actually. I said, I promised I would read it, and she gave me a Bible. Well, I opened this Bible. It's a King James version.
Uh-oh.
Oh, thou and thee. It was like, oh, my goodness me.
Did you also start at the beginning and work your way?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
Genesis, the worst place to start. Forgive me. And the Bible was falling to pieces. I mean, she's a born-again Christian by this time, so she's academic-heady, so she likes the old version Bibles. And it was falling to pieces. It had marks in it and notes, and I tried it. It didn't work. And then I ordered off eBay the very basic English. What is it? The new language. That's it. That's the one, yeah. Very clear basic English. And, yeah, it scared me. But anyway, I started properly in the New Testament with John, which is, I think, probably you might agree, one of the best places to start. But before I did that, or during, it's all kind of rolls into one now, I wanted to know what the truth was. Where did this Bible come from? Who wrote it? So I was absolutely dumbfounded when I discovered that the Bible, the Old and the New Testament, is not 2 books, as I thought. It's 66 books,
yes,
written over 1,600 years by 40 different authors on 3 continents in 3 different languages. What kind of book is that? And it all just fits together. It was a bit bonkers. So I started researching all of this, and I soon discovered that the biggest mistake you can make as a non-Christian whilst looking at the Bible is do not listen to any opinion from anyone on the Bible who has never read the Bible. Yeah. Never do that. I'd been doing that for decades. It's nonsense. It's a fairy tale. All of these people, including members of my beloved family, I love them dearly, were giving me this advice over the years. They'd never read the Bible. And also, never take a quote from the Bible out of context. Yeah. Always know where it comes from. What happened before the quote, what's happening when the quote is delivered, and what happens afterwards. Because when I was researching the Bible, I was just discovering the most bonkers things, like the 66,000 connections between the Old Testament and the New Testament. Proven connections. People, places, towns, events, weather systems, all connected, all linked. And then it doesn't take long to realize that it is impossible for 40 people over 1,600 years to create this book so perfectly.
Because they didn't even have the internet to cross-reference.
They didn't have the internet to cross-reference. But talking about cross-referencing, I don't know whether we mentioned it, but Professor Jordan Peterson, the psychologist from America, who is looking very closely at Christianity at the moment. I know he's very unwell at the moment, but he is looking at it. And he describes the Bible as the world's first hyperlinked book. And that's a good way of thinking about it, like a Wikipedia.
Yeah.
So it's like Wikipedia. It's the only hyperlinked book and the first one, and it runs like Wikipedia. Like Wikipedia, it takes you all over the internet, all over the world with linked articles to build up all this wonderful information.
Although not open source like Wikipedia, that you can edit your bits.
Have you had a nasty experience? And he said it's just like Wikipedia, and coincidentally, the chap who invented Wikipedia, Larry Sanger, was an atheist philosopher for many, many years, made a fortune with Wikipedia, grew disillusioned with life, researched Christianity. He's now a born-again Christian. So again, talk about comedy value with God. You know, the Bible is the first Wikipedia. The guy that designs Wikipedia is an atheist. He studies the Bible and becomes a Christian. You couldn't make it up, could you?
So let me throw a question at you.
Yeah.
How can you trust that the Bible we have now is the same text that was at the time of Jesus?
Well, I didn't believe it was, of course, with my upbringing, and I thought that the Bible, as we know it today, was first printed in the 1450s with the printing press. And up until that point, it was just a series of stories that just amalgamated together, a bit like Chinese whispers, until it was printed and it was set in stone. That's how I thought the Bible evolved, micro-evolved, and people will tell you who have no understanding of the Bible, that's how the Bible came together. But it's very, very easy to disprove that theory. So you can look at first century documents, the Gospels, which, by the way, I didn't know were biographical accounts, eyewitness accounts, written in the first century. I just thought they were fairy tales. And you can see that there are hundreds of thousands of copies of the New Testament documents, because the only way to spread the good news of Jesus was to copy out the stories and pass them around the known world, the Roman world. And you can look at these very early documents, and they are self-proving. They are the same story. The story does not change, alter. Atheists will point out that there are 60,000 or more of mistakes in the Bible documents. It's probably even more. But when you think about it, that the Bible, the New Testament, is the most copied ancient document of all time, bar none, of course there's going to be mistakes. The stories aren't mistaken, it's the spelling mistakes, it's the punctuation, it's the grammar, it's the use of words. But the story is the same. The story is pure. Believe this or believe it not. Search it yourself. The New Testament documents can be proven to be 99.5% pure, meaning you read the Gospel of John, written in the 2nd century, a copy of the original, and then you read one printed in a Bible in my eBay book, you can see that it is exactly the same story. You don't have to believe it. It's not saying it's true, that's another question, but it's saying that the documents are accurate. So those accounts written in the 1st century by eyewitnesses or written by investigators who interviewed eyewitnesses are pure. The story has not changed.
Okay, what if we go further back to the Old Testament? Surely those have been changed to fit in with what Christians believe.
Well, I think you can just look at the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered just after the war of 1947, I think, and they're carbon dated to 200, 300 BC. The stories are the same. They haven't altered.
So they are some of the Old Testament books.
Yes, they are they are the Old Testament books.
Yeah.
Prophesying the coming Messiah, prophesying things that Jesus actually did 200 or 300 years before he was born.
And those have been dated to be
They're
that
totally
old.
Dated, totally dated.
There's a big one in Isaiah that a lot of people assumed Isaiah. Please help me with which chapter it is. Is it 52?
53.
53. Thank you. Isaiah 53. There was a very long-held assumption that must have been changed.
That's right.
Because it talked about Jesus in such accuracy of his death, and people for years said, well, that's been changed.
Yeah.
That's been changed. That has to have been changed. Yet the Dead Sea Scrolls,
They
300
have it.
years before Jesus,
They have it.
have that entire chapter.
It's funny because Isaiah 53 basically describes the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, does it not?
Yeah.
Very powerful stuff. And you're right, the Dead Sea Scrolls have it.
Yeah.
And it's proven to be dated. And it's funny because you can watch videos with Messianic Jews interviewing Jews in Israel, and they read them Isaiah 53, and they say to them, I want to read this passage to you. Tell me, do you think it came from the Old Testament or the New Testament? And they'll read them Isaiah 53, which describes accurately the crucifixion of Jesus. Wow. And each and every Jew will say, well, that's straight out of the New Testament because it's describing the crucifixion of Jesus. And then they're hit with the fact that no, it's out of the Torah, the Old Testament. But it's one of the Isaiahs that is very little taught.
Yes.
They don't talk about it.
And there's a reason why.
There's a good reason why.
Yes. What other things? Can you think of examples? There's one I'm thinking of off the top of my head, and I'm sure there's others of things that, I guess, like the light thing, that we've discovered since the Bible's been written, that the Bible knew before we knew. I'm thinking one example that really gets me is again, for years, and we can get into some archaeology here as well if you want. For years, we assumed the Hittites as an empire didn't exist.
That's right.
They're only mentioned in one place in history, and that's the Bible. So for years, historians said, these people don't exist, there's no evidence from them, we can't find them. They must be a fill-in for something else. That the Bible's made them up. And then in it's either the late 1800s or the early 1900s, they found the Hittite Empire.
That's right.
All of it. This massive city. It's
palaces,
huge. Palaces, all of it. This civilization that nobody knew existed. And the only place that we'd heard about them before finding it was the Bible.
The fairy tale Bible.
Yes, that must have made it up.
That's right.
But no, they were there. They just needed finding.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other examples of that when you were doing your research that really leapt out to you as a sort of like, oh?
Well, I think a generic one is this, and it's a fact. No archaeological find can debunk a Bible story. Archaeological finds only confirm Bible stories. So we haven't found evidence to prove the Bible wrong. Archaeologists are only proving evidence to prove it right. And that's a very good example of that. But I think what one of the real moment in my journey to becoming a born-again Christian, which I'm delighted to say, I love saying it, because it's just such a joyful thing to be, is when I was studying DNA, I was reading the New Testament and at the same time writing about Jesus. So I was jumping all over the place. Whatever I fancied that particular day, I would go across. And I was looking at DNA, and I came across a passage. I don't know which gospel it's in, someone might know, where Jesus says to his disciples something along the lines, and I'll paraphrase, God knows you so well. He loves you, so much so that every hair on your head is numbered. And for 2,000 years, the skeptics ridiculed it. Bonkers. What does he mean? And the Christians have been defensive, saying, well, it's just a bit of hyperbole, it's just a bit of exaggeration. No, science has now proven that what Jesus said 2,000 years ago was scientifically correct. Every hair on your head is indeed numbered. Now, for me, it's not proof of anything, but it's just like a bit of one of those dropping moments. There's lots of instances like that through.
The oldest book in the Bible is Job.
Yes.
And it contains the scientific theory of the water cycle.
Now, I didn't know that. The water cycle is fascinating. Tell me.
It goes, so your rain comes, it falls down.
Yeah.
It goes into rivers, the rivers go into the sea, the evaporation goes into clouds, and the whole thing goes round and round. It's described in Job.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I didn't know
that's
that.
the oldest book in the Bible.
Well, on that point, and proof then, that the Bible is accurate, that there is such a thing as the water cycle. And,
They wouldn't have known it was the wildest. How did they know?
How did they know?
They didn't
Exactly.
have any scientific instruments or observations to do that.
No.
That was done by revelation.
That's wonderful to know. And of course, that's the amount of water we have on Earth now is finite. We have exactly the same amount of water on Earth as we have always had. Again, it's one of those bonkers moments when you discover this, that the same water we're drinking, dinosaurs drank. It's the same water. It's just recycled, a scientific fact. And for hundreds or thousands of years, scientists have saying, oh, and by the way, do you know the story in the Bible with Noah and the world was submerged underwater? Sorry, guys, it's scientifically impossible. There is only a certain amount of water on Earth. It is impossible to flood the Earth. So that's a bonkers story. It's a fairy tale. It's all made up. Well, blow me. In the last couple of decades, scientists have discovered 400 miles below the Earth's mantle is a reservoir of water, enough to fill our oceans 3 times over and enough to submerge the Earth hundreds of meters deep. And what does it say in the Bible? Where does the water come from? From above and below. Mm-hmm. So whether, I'm not saying it proves Noah's Ark, I'm not saying it proves the flood, I'm saying that there is enough water on planet Earth for that to happen. And if you believe in God, I think you can understand that God has enough power to get that water from down there up here. It's perfectly possible. So another example of just these fun facts, fun Bible facts. Whoever thought that was a thing?
That's great. Cliff.
Yeah, the flat Earth, where people believed that the Earth was flat.
For a second there, I didn't know where you were going to go.
Yeah. Okay. I was going to say you're at the wrong event.
But, the Bible definitely confirms that God sits upon the circle of the Earth.
Yeah.
And yet for generations, people believed that the Earth was flat. Was it Christopher Columbus?
Yes.
Who believed that he would fall off the other side? Yeah.
Makes you wonder why he set off, really.
It's interesting. Even when Jesus was talking about the second coming, he talks about one will be in a field and one will be taken. Yeah. One will be in bed and the other will be taken. And he's describing 3 different times of day in time zones.
Time zones.
Essentially.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyway,
yes.
that's
No. Yeah.
I guess we're opening for questions.
Yes, of course.
Should we open for questions on this subject of, so really focusing on not whether the Bible's true, we'll get to that one in a future week, but whether the Bible document we have is reliable.
Well, something that I've heard Christians say is that I believe every word of the Bible is true, and that was always a bit of a struggle for me. But I now do understand what they're saying, because the Bible is definitely historical. It's symbolic, it's figurative, it's literal, it's allegorical, it's mystical, it's philosophical, it's poetic. Now, it may not be, as I thought they believed, historically correct all the way through, but it is true all the way through. Let me try and explain. Jordan Peterson says that the Bible is way more true than true. It took me a while to get my head around that. But it is true, because whether it's a psalm or it's a proverb or it's an allegorical story or it's a mystical story, there is truth in it. Every word of the Bible, whether it's in poetic form or a historical document, is true. There is nothing in the Bible that you could say is not true. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
It doesn't have to be. It's not a history. I thought it was like a history book.
Yes,
it's not a history book.
It's not a history book. It's not a science book.
No.
It's a book about.
I'll tell you what it is. It's the best self-help book ever written. That's what it is. I have read lots of self-help books, and I know lots of people who read them all of the time. Throw them all away. The Bible is the self-help book of the millennium. Ronald Reagan said, every single problem known to man, there is a solution in the Bible, and I understand it. From a relationship problem to a health problem to work to feeling depressed, there is a solution or something that will assist you in the Bible. Now then, and it starts from the day you're born to the day you die and eternity. Now, you don't have to like what the Bible says, but that's exactly what it is. It's a manual for life.
That's good.
It's wild.
It is.
It's bonkers.
It is.
And why? And this is why I shout about my book and I do talks for cups of tea. That's it, right? Because I just feel that more people need to know this stuff.
Yeah.
They really do. It's there.
It is. So, right, questions on the Bible itself. We've got at the back there, Ian.
When you were about your daughter writing in the Bible, it brought back a memory of a friend of mine who used to write notes, like a lot of people do. And one I remember seeing in his Bible, he said, "This can't be true." And did you come across anything like that, where you really read something in the Bible and you thought, "This can't be true," and then you actually dug into it and found something that was really struck you as something, really...
Well, I think initially when I first started reading the Bible, it was scary, particularly the Old Testament, and it's hard to get your head around. But I think once you start to realise that the message, the story may not be historically true, it may not be, but the message is real and it's true and it's full of wisdom that you couldn't make up. So, I did struggle, but it was funny because I think that when I first started reading the Bible, it was difficult. When I felt that I was getting to know the person, the character, the real living person of Jesus, before I believed he was God, the Bible started to make a bit more sense. When I came to my moment of truly believing, because of the resurrection and spiritual transformation, that Jesus is God, the Bible came alive. And I think that's it. Once you love God, the Bible is just the best book in the world. If you don't like God or you put off God, the Bible's very difficult to get to grips with, and you've got to really work hard at it.
That's an interesting thought, because often there's two very different ways to read.
Yeah.
One is in resistance, and one is in a joy, and
that's right.
Very different experiences, and you've experienced both.
I have, and I love reading the letters in the New Testament, Paul's letters. I love them. Jude and John 1 and John 2, I just love them. And I've read them, a dozen times each. Every time I read, it's like reading a new letter, because I get something else. You tell me, how on earth is this possible? Most of these men were barely educated. They are geniuses. The way that the Bible is written is, I do believe it's supernatural. Yeah. And I think it's proven to be supernatural with the 66,000 connections, which AI can now pick out and sort out. Again, the more we learn about science, the more it can prove the Bible correct.
That's good, thank you.
Well, does anybody else have any experience with the Bible? Did anyone else begin reading it with great reluctance, and has it changed for you when you became a Christian?
I remember in year 7, going into secondary school, we were all given an NIV Bible. Somebody in the school, their dad owned the local Christian bookshop. He was manager there. We all were given a NIV full Bible. Mine sat on my shelf untouched, in pristine condition, until I was about 16, 17 when I started going to church. At a house fire a couple of years ago, I managed to save that Bible. It's been around the world with me. It's held together with duct tape. It's got notes in it. It's got things stuck in it. It has gone from a pristine book that was sat on the shelf to loved, used. I can't physically use it now because of the damage from the smoke, but it still sits on my shelf. And I managed to save that book out of most of my belongings gone. Was amazing. Every other Bible that I had, every study Bible, I lost them all. But I did manage to save that one, which was the one I got at age 11.
How wonderful.
I think for me, how the Word of God has definitely changed is that initially I wanted to read it for information. And now I want to read it for revelation, and I think they're two very different things.
Interesting.
And I think that when you are seeking God and wanting to know God, everything about his character and his nature is so clearly described in there. But when you're in relationship with him, it makes that become living, breathing, and alive. And I think that that is the amazing word of God, because it becomes not just knowledge, it becomes relationship and revelation, and that's how the word has changed for me over time.
And that's wonderful, and you sense that because you believe in God. But if you were a non-believer and you read the Bible, by goodness me, it's hard work. That change that it can bring in you. And they say, don't they, that God has written 2 books, to prove who he is. He's given us enough evidence. One is the Bible, and the other is creation. Back to the evolution thing. Study both, and you can only come to the conclusion that he's real.
That's good. That's good. Oh, Cliff.
I once read the story of a chap who was given a present for Christmas. It was an autobiography. It was the autobiography of a motor racing driver. He had no interest whatsoever in the motor racing driver, so he didn't read it. He put it on the shelf. Years later, he'd been invited to a party in London, and he explains that when he got to this party, he saw a distinguished-looking gentleman. Sometimes the thought, I've seen him before somewhere. During the course of the night, he was introduced to this gentleman who was the racing car driver. And he tells the story. He went home, and the first thing he did, he pulled that book off the shelf, and he began to read it avidly because he'd met the author.
Yes.
And I think
That's a very good
David
point.
said.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Get to know the author and you fall in love with the book.
Yeah. Although the flip side, they've had much more to talk about that night if you've read it beforehand.
2 lessons there.
I ask you one last question. Is for someone who's not read the Bible before, as someone who read it both ways, I guess, what's your top tips?
Okay, well, just to reiterate quickly then, don't take advice on the Bible from anybody who has not read the Bible. Don't take it out of context. Use your own research. For me, getting a Bible app on your phone, on your iPad, is really easy, and for me it was really important. So I would want to read Genesis. So I'd listen to a 10-minute Bible app on Genesis, explaining to me in layman terms what it was all about. And then I'd read Genesis. Wow, makes a difference. Job is a really difficult book. I'm reading Job, coincidentally, again now. It's a tricky one, and it's a big one. But listen to a Bible app first, and it really just gives you a foundational sort of grounding. And I think, let it breathe. Give it time. You don't have to have a PhD to understand it. Just give it time and realize that it is all of these things, historical, symbolic, allegorical, mystical. It's all of those things, and many of those things in each book. So don't think that you're going to fully understand it straight away, but with assistance, just give it time. And it will change you. It will change you. It will, if nothing else, it will give you great advice for life. It will train you to deal with hardships. It will give you a positive attitude. It will help with depression. It will help in any and every department you want it to, if you allow it to. And finally, drop the bias that I had for decades. Try your best to drop it and go into it with an open mind.
That's great. Thank you very much, David, for tonight.
Lovely. Thank you.
Can we give David a big thank you?
Oh, thank you. Thank you.